title might startle you at first, but when you learn the truth about art history, you will begin to understand this tongue-in-cheek. Often, we find women's bare bodies the center of attention in historical paintings. Women often are seen as muses in art, but seeing a woman as the artist behind the canvas is extremely rare to hear about. The goddess Venus is one of the most recognizable naked women seen in art history. The first time Venus was recorded in art history was in this sculpture, dated between 30 to 25,000 BC. Now that's a lot of bare breast. Most people recognize Venus from the paintings done in the late 14 to 1500s, such as The Birth of Venus and Venus Urbino. Even though nude bodies can be seen throughout art history, these women that were being worshipped in these paintings were not granted the same rights in the art world as men were. In Jamie Poisson's article, Parents Keep the Child's Gender Secret, the mother discusses how she wants to remove the gender stigma away from her child's mind frames. I believe that gender stigma has led to many harmful things in our society without us even realizing it. We expect men to act one way, and women to act the other. With these set-in-stone guidelines, we make it so each gender cannot overpass the threshold. And when they do, they face judgment, ridicule, and often go back to acting like the mainstream stereotype that they were birthed into. In the art world, the gender stigma for women was that they were inferior to the male artist. Women were often seen as baby makers, only to carry on a man's family line. She should always obey the command of her superior man, and should never go off the beaten path and have talents which make her independent of her man. Even though these ideas might seem dated, unintentionally many people still have a grain of this embedded in their thinking pattern. Women were often looked down upon as artists in comparison to their superior man, and often pushed into more gentle and feminine arts. These crafts were often things such as textiles, pottery, jewelry making, and later on photography. Fine arts was out of most women's reach, but some women were still able to paint. They just were not allowed to illustrate nude figures, even though they probably would be exceptional at it because they were quite familiar with their own. Women were actually not allowed to enter art academies until 1861. This caused a huge stall in their art skills. Being able to illustrate the nude body is something that is very necessary for an artist to be able to paint proper proportions and know how fabric and clothing should lay on the body. This gender discrimination made it so females were denied access in art galleries. The Guerrilla Girls were a group of anonymous women who formed in New York City in 1985 to fight against women and minority inequalities in the art world. They found that in the Museum of Modern Art, also known as MoMA, of the 169 artists showcased, only 13 were women. Looking closer, they realized 85% of the nudes in the gallery were actually of the female body, but only 5% of the whole gallery were female artists. This started their famous protest campaign artwork, which displayed a painting of a naked woman's body with a gorilla head stating, "Do women have to be naked to get into the Met Museum?" Keep in mind, this unequal representation was in 1985. That's only 30 years ago. Because men control the media sources, the idea of the male gaze has been created and spread all over society's culture. In this theory, all media and imagery is being made with the perception of a straight man's eye. Look at most history books. The people who wrote the stories in them were the ones who always won the battles and the wars. In this case, the highly achieving male is the one who literally left out women out of the art history books. Powerful men on top of the art world have overlooked women artists in an unequal fashion. People do not realize this, but there was plenty of women artists who influenced the art movement of their time, but they were forgotten upon their death. Their stories faded to black, never to be told again. Women are getting more representation these days, but you cannot go back and rewrite the history books. Nowadays, a lot of art galleries have separate sections just for women's art. But it is just segregating instead of accepting all artists for their talent separately, instead of picking out pieces just for minority representation. As Ariel Levy talked about in her book, female chauvinist pigs. Women often were left to resort to acting like a man to become as successful as they are. Some women were left with no choice but to change their artist names to something more gentler. Grace Hardigan was a woman painter who changed her name from Grace to George, purposely to be mistaken as a male artist. It isn't uncommon for women to be unacknowledged and become secondary to their male counterparts and only seen as a muse for their work. For example, Lee Krasner, an expressionist abstract painter, often fell second to her husband. She was usually referred to as just Mrs. Jackson Pollock, instead of being recognized for her individual talent. Unfortunately, these women artists resorted to covering their true selves instead of just trying to be accepted for who they really are. Society's bias towards male leadership, gender stereotypes, and the sexualization of the woman's body has given the man the upper hand, while leaving women having to fight extra hard just to get noticed. Art is a form of manifestation that lets another person see into your creative soul